Cop dressed as Donald Duck sets trap for drivers, rakes in $30,000 in tickets in one day. Can you say revenue generation? No, I'm sorry, this is catching dangerous criminals. By first creating a dangerous situation so you can predictably label someone a criminal first. Apparently the profession of police officer in America now amounts to little more than, well, what exactly is the word for douchebag, maybe? Entrapment much? Well, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck. This is via the Free Thought Project. Residents of a New Jersey town are disputing a recent trap that police set up for drivers this past Halloween. Last week, an undercover officer was dressed in a giant Donald Duck costume and paced back and forth on the sidewalk and street on a busy road. Officers would then pull over drivers who failed to yield for the duck and hit them with $230 traffic tickets. Police issued a whopping 130 tickets that day for a total take of $290,900. Most people see a person or a duck cross the street. They think that person is done. They don't think that person is going to immediately turn around and cross the street 10 more times in a row. Not to mention the spectacle of a man in a Donald Duck costume hanging out in the crosswalk probably held up traffic to begin with. Do you think they teach people in those defensive driving classes to be on the lookout for a grown man dressed as a duck who may or may not be crossing a street several hundred times and basically working out in the crosswalk? Wasn't there any other crime or anything of value going on in Fort Lee, New Jersey that day for the cops to do besides set people up to be ripped off? Or were they just that hard up for the cash? This sounds more like a mob tactic to shake down town residents than something a respectable officer of the law, that's an oxymoron. Sadly, these traps are not only not new, they are the latest craze in law enforcement revenue generation. Last time I wrote about this back in July, the Somerville Police Department, represented in the video below, wasn't even imaginative enough to give their officer a giant duck costume to make their point. It was just some guy nervously padding back and forth on the crosswalk, and you can see that I will call him a douchebag in the white shirt there. And I highly recommend watching that video. It's only like a minute and change. Where's the public education lesson here about crosswalk safety? Raising awareness to help pedestrians and drivers coexist? There isn't, because what you just watched in that video isn't about that. Yes, drivers should stop for crosswalks, but if this intersection is really that busy and that dangerous for people to cross, they should put in a traffic light. Not that most pedestrians cross the same street back and forth repeatedly for an hour in the first place. And in that scenario, the responding cop who was raring to give out tickets is seen blowing through the intersection at top speed, the exact thing they are giving out tickets for. Good thing there weren't any other pedestrians there. Yeah, it's true. You watch the video, and when somebody doesn't yield for that fat guy crossing the street, the cop just rips right through the intersection after. What a joke. Throw this on the pile of sleazy, underhand police state tactics, like Rahm Emanuel's administration making all of Chicago's yellow lights just a tenth of a second shorter, just to rake in an extra $8 million in new tickets. The fact that Keene, New Hampshire, is suing a group of activists for putting change in people's parking meters because of lost revenue generated by giving out parking tickets, and the cops in Waldo, Florida, who finally outed their sheriff for enforcing illegal ticket quotas. A retired police sergeant of 14 years wrote, "I'm so annoyed at what is happening these days in what I call indiscriminate revenue gathering. It's absolutely disgusting. The government and the police force need to hang their heads in shame." He included a list of basic legal steps drivers can take to beat a ticket, which he said if even 10% of all ticketed drivers followed, would crash the whole system. And so I just clicked that link. It's good information, but it's pretty long, so I'm not going to include it in this video. I'll put out another video right after this about the list of basic legal steps drivers can take to beat a ticket. And hopefully you never get pulled over by one of these scumbag cops. But if you do and you're given a ticket, you want to check out these 10 steps this guy gives you. So, yeah, I don't know how they can legally get away with this. It's obviously entrapment, sending somebody back and forth like this just to get people to break the law. You're not supposed to be allowed to do that, but then again, the cops are not supposed to be allowed to do a lot of things that they do. So be on the lookout. And yeah, you should yield for people in crosswalks. I'm not saying don't do that. I mean, it's just common sense if you see somebody walking in front of your car to stop. But at the same time, if you're a pedestrian and you just blindly walk into an intersection, you know, if you happen to get plowed over by a car, you kind of deserve it. You know, again, drivers should use common sense, and so should the people walking across the street. So, I mean, yes, it happened on Halloween. Yes, it's hilarious that some asshole cop is stuck inside that duck costume. But cops shouldn't be allowed to do this kind of stuff.